Hello again. Good morning. I'm coming to you from my kitchen this morning. This is the second in my 2 days of just taking some time to consider a little devotional on the words of Christ, the seven phrases, the seven words of Christ that he spoke from the cross, given to you just as a little daily devotional this Easter. The background to this is as many of you know, I was pastor of a church here in St Anne's, and I resigned a couple of months ago. The church is in a good place and is continuing, but I felt had served my purpose there for this season. And the plan was at that time that I would have a series of messages coming up close to Easter. So in part way, the preparation was done for that. But then, of course, no one knew what was going to happen with coronavirus and the situation there. So as a way of sort of saying farewell to the church in that chapter in my life and in the life of our family, I thought it would be good just to this Holy Week in the run up to Easter to give not a sermon by any means, just a devotional snapshot of those seven phrases that Christ spoke from the cross. So I really do hope that they're helpful for you. And this is the second of that series, and I've entitled this little talk, Becoming the Family of God. So if you remember, I read a scripture last week from Luke where Jesus had been led out to the cross, and then we're going to just going to read you a couple of verses from John, which continues the story. So I'm reading from John chapter 19, beginning at verse 23 to 27. And this is the Easter story continuing. When the soldiers crucified Jesus, they took his clothes and divided them into 4 shares, one for each of them, with the undergarments remaining. The garments were seamless, woven in one piece from bottom to the top. Let's not tear it, they said to one another. Let's decide by lot who will get it. And this happened that the scriptures that might be fulfilled that said, they divided my clothes amongst them and cast lots for my garments. So this is what the soldiers did. Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother and his mother's sister Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother there, and the disciple whom he loved nearby, he said to her, "Woman, this is your son." And to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that time on, this disciple took her home, the text tells us. As we sit in this situation facing lockdown to many extents, it's natural for us at this time to think about how important it is to us that we have good, strong, lasting, meaningful relationships. You know, it's ironic that at this time that we probably recognize more than ever how important it is to have good, close, intimate contact with other people. To feel respected, to feel even loved indeed, lies at the very heart of what it means to be a human being, to be connected to other people. As a human being, from the moment we're born, we grow and we develop and we are cared for and nurtured by other humans around us. Has it ever occurred to you, have you ever noticed that other animals when they arrive newly born, they're actually at a higher level of development than humans are? It's actually, I saw a documentary quite recently which showed how a 10-week-old puppy is much more independent and developed even than a human child. Most 10-week-old animals are able to feed for themselves and look after themselves much more than a 10-week-old baby. You see, animals generally arrive more fully formed, but then they develop very little beyond that point. They maybe develop for about 3 months. Humans, you and I, on the other hand, we arrive in the world totally dependent on the nurturing of other human beings. We need that in order to develop and to reach our full potential. So I say it's natural, it's normal to want to feel connected to people. It's natural, normal to feel the need to be nurtured by other human beings. And that's something that we have to find new ways of doing during this unique period in modern history when the whole world finds itself locking itself away from other people. Now, I actually believe that it's God's plan. It's God's plan for every single person that we should be nurtured by each other, not just physically and emotionally, but spiritually also. So the question I want to consider this morning when looking at these words of Christ spoken from the cross is, how might we use them to develop good, strong, nurturing relationships, even through these really tough times at the moment? Now, in my opinion, the Bible is packed with advice in these matters. In fact, the Bible and the words of Christ have insights that I believe you find in no other place. I believe these words of Jesus spoken from the cross are not just special, they are in fact unique. And what I want to share with you quickly today is why I believe these words can help us to live in a particular way. And I'd like to do that by just revisiting those scriptures. Now, we saw that, as it said, that when near the cross of Jesus, that was Mary, the wife of Cleopas, Mary Magdalene. And when Jesus saw his mother there, and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said this to her, "Woman, behold, here is your son." And to the disciple, "Behold, here is your mother." So we see there are 5 people in total gathered at the foot of the cross. Mary, the wife of Cleopas, Mary Magdalene, Jesus' mother, also called Mary, plus her sister, plus this one unnamed disciple. Now remember, I'm sure most of you know Jesus had 12 disciples, but after he was arrested, it appears all but one of them have fled. Interesting, isn't it, that it's the men who seem to have run away. Maybe perhaps they were worried that they might be next. They might be arrested, but it appears that it is the women who have stayed. Now, there's only one thing said about the single disciple who remained. Rather mysteriously, in the text he is described as the disciple whom he loved. Now, that's an interesting little phrase. So I wonder who that might be. Well, fortunately, we don't have just this one verse to try and find out. The term the disciple who Jesus loved is mentioned 5 times in other gospel accounts, and on all occasions it's referring to John. So he's actually, most people believe that he's referring to John, the actual writer of this gospel account. So here's the scene. Thousands of people have experienced the life-changing teaching and ministry of Jesus, but here at this point, as he hangs at the cross, there are now just 5 left. 5 faithful followers of him, 4 women and 1 man. And Jesus speaks to them from the cross. And he makes a statement. It almost seems a declaration. And firstly, he says to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." You see, living in faith creates new relationships, new affiliations. It's almost like new family connections are being birthed here. You see, for these people standing at the cross, it's not the end, it's the beginning. It's the beginning of new things. The cross represents the beginnings of new relationships. Relationships that are so close, it seems that they can be described in terms of almost like a family. But did you notice, he also turns to John, and he says to John, "Behold your mother." So the new relationship is reciprocal. It works 2 ways. Look at the text again. It said this, and he turns to the disciple and he says, "Behold your mother." And then it tells us the extra information. From that time on, the disciple took her home. From that point on, John immediately took on the responsibility of caring for the mother of Jesus. Now, church history records for us elsewhere that he not only did that, but he did that willingly, and he did it to the day that Mary, the mother of Jesus, died. The point is this: that was a wonderful decision. But for John, it would have been a costly decision, because with that new relationship came new responsibility. This relationship would cost John time, probably cost him money, and certainly cost him energy. It was going to be a commitment for the rest of her life, and potentially, for all he knew, it could have been for the rest of his life. And what that tells me is true, real, loving relationships are costly. And they're based on not only love, but commitment, which means there will always be an emotional and perhaps even a practical cost. But you know what? When Jesus talks about this new relationship, I don't want just to highlight the cost, because for us there can be many blessings that can be received from these new types of relationship, amazing positive benefits, because real, supportive, loving relationships, they're always a two-way street. The cross of Jesus, the words spoken from the cross, establishes new relationships between people. Firstly, it enables us, in understanding this, to understand our relationship with God in a new way. But also there is potential for new, loving, supportive, spiritually nurturing relationships between people, as he is saying here. So these words of Christ spoken from the cross tell us that the cross can change not only our relationship with God, but it can change our relationship with other people. But finally, let me say this: the cross can also change your relationship with yourself, your understanding of yourself. These words of Jesus can completely change our understanding of ourselves. That's why the Apostle Paul wrote elsewhere in a book of the Bible called 2 Corinthians, "For if anyone is in Christ, they are a new creation. The old is gone and the new has come." So think about that. Think about the different types of relationships that you might have. You have relationships that are produced by blood. We have fathers, we have mothers, we have brothers and sisters in the wider family, and we perhaps feel really separated from them at the moment because of circumstances. But there are other types of relationships. Some relationships are just based on shared interests, sports, hobbies, or maybe even for profit if we go into business relationships by people. But the important thing here, I believe Jesus speaks out, is that relationships produced by living out a life under the teaching and words of Christ are relationships formed with the sole purpose of producing and replicating the love of God into other people's lives. Grasp hold of that truth, friends, because Jesus' words tells us he not only wants us to build and develop his relationship with you, he wants you to build and develop the relationships that you have with other people. I suppose what I'm saying is I want us all to try and understand, to get a grasp of the fact that the most valuable thing that you can have in life is your relationship with God. But that relationship must, if it's real, it must be reproduced by building, loving, and nurturing other people and your relationships with other people. Jesus told us, said this very clearly when he was literally asked the question, what's the most important rule to live by in life? And his answer to that was, love God and love your neighbour as yourself. There's one final thing I want to say this morning, and I want to say it because I believe it's an absolutely foundational truth that's revealed to us here. There's no such thing as a significant human relationship that doesn't in some way contain two things: the ability to love someone else and the ability to forgive someone else. That's why I believe the Bible and the truth revealed in it are the best way to build true, real, loving, nurturing relationships. And that is because it teaches you not only how you might be forgiven, but it teaches you how you might be able to forgive others and build strong, meaningful relationships. You see, these words of Jesus spoken from the cross of Calvary, the second of only 7 phrases he said, I believe these words, if believed and understood and applied, have the ability to restore broken relationships. They can restore our relationship with God, they can restore our relationship with ourselves, and they can restore our relationships with other people if we but choose to apply them. The words of Jesus spoken here can make all things new, and that particularly applies to understanding yourself and who you truly are. They can potentially restore your relationship with the God who created you and loved you.